Well, we're back. The last video we did, we were working on this little ball peen hammer, and I need to get back to that, but it's going to be mostly grinding. And since it's early morning still and it hasn't gotten that hot in the shop, I think I'm going to do something that requires higher heat and more work, and I'll save this for this afternoon, and we'll pick that back up when I start grinding that. So I'm going to go to our Pulaski project. And I have a couple of these. This one's got a handle. This one I keep meaning to put a handle on, but I haven't. They aren't exactly the same size. This one's a little larger and probably the one I'm going to use more as a pattern. But you kind of get an idea of what they look like by seeing this one on the handle. Again, this is a tool used in forestry work, trail building, wildfire fighting, things like that. You can cut trees, you can cut roots. Really a very practical tool, but a lot of work to use. Now this one without the handle, besides being a little bit bigger, has a very interesting telltale sign of how it was made. And that is that you can see a twist in this adze. So it was a flat piece, and instead of forging it out and peening it wider, it was twisted. And I don't know if that means this whole thing was forged, or if that's the only bit of hot work that was done and the rest was kind of a drop forged process, probably not a hand forging process. But I think that's the way I'm going to do this, because I think that really adds to the character of the tool to see that telltale sign of how it was made. So that brings us back to our piece of 1 inch by 3 inch that I have cut 7 inches long. This is plenty heavy enough to get this out of. I'm probably going to end up getting rid of some of it. I have already drilled a series of 5/16 holes here, and that just makes it easier to punch the eye. Something this tall, it is really easy as you drive a punch in to get it off center and end up with an eye that isn't straight or doesn't hang well on a handle, and that's just not acceptable. And I would rather take this extra step of drilling to help guarantee that the eye comes out right. It helps with my lineup. I can see these holes way better than I can see a series of center punch marks. Plus it creates a path of least resistance for the punch so it wants to go all the way through. I drill halfway from one side, then I drill halfway from the other side. The next thing I'm going to do is prepare it for the welded in tool steel insert on this end, which will be the blade. And for that, I'm just going to put a bandsaw cut in. So I'm going to go to the little bandsaw. This is a big piece for this little bandsaw, but I think it'll do it. Well, that took about 15 minutes, but I've got a 3/4 inch deep saw kerf in there, and by the time I start to spread this out, that'll be more like an inch of overlap, and that will be just fine to forge weld in the tool steel bit. This side, the tool steel will just be overlaid on the top side of the adze, so it does not need a saw kerf. Now I want to try something a little bit different on this, something I haven't tried before. I know the end of my eye is going to be right through this area, and I'm going to need to leave a little bit of space for it to have a nice wall on the eye. So I leave about 3/4 of an inch for the back of the eye. That will probably get ground down later. And I know my material is an inch thick, so if I leave an inch here and put a hole in right here, then I think I'll be able to cut this way and draw this part out into the adze. It looks like a little bit light on the material, but I think it'll be enough, I hope. So hopefully this will work quite nicely. So I just need to mark the center of this hole and just drill it right there and adapt to whatever it is we end up with. But I'm hoping this works, and when I twist this, then I will end up with a nice piece that we can forge into the adze blade. It's going to take some correcting because it'll be all off to one side. Now there is one problem with doing it this way, is I've just lost quite a large amount of material, and that's going to make this heavy on this side. I think that's not a big deal because this will be the most used side, but this old one actually balances pretty well. So I cut this saw kerf deeper, and I can put my tool steel edge in further here, and then I can trim some of this off if I need to balance it. And when I do the overlay weld on this, I can use a heavier piece of 5160 and maybe even let it hang out a little bit and scarf weld it, which is no big deal whatsoever. In fact, it might actually be better for the tool to have more tool steel in this area, not just a full laminate the whole way. So I think we can get it back in balance if that becomes a problem. I'm hoping it is not, but we will find out. This will also get a fair amount of grinding in this area, and this will be left thicker, so there's lots of opportunity here to get this back in balance. But we will find out what happens. The next thing we need to do is punch a hole, and to do that I'm going to use this punch, which is certainly not the right size for this, but if I work one end and the other end, some in the middle, back and forth, this will work, and it'll offer less resistance. And I just don't have a punch this big. I don't think I want to make one because I don't see me doing a lot of tools this size. I might reconsider if I decide to make more of these, or double bit axes or something like that. But in the meantime, I'm just going to use this, and yes, this is a hand punch. I could do this under the hydraulic press, or I could do it under the power hammer. Well, power hammer is not up and running, but if I had the right punch, I could do either one of those. The reason I don't want to do the hydraulic press, here are a couple of previously punched eyes. This one I did exactly like this, pre-drilled the holes, punched it with this exact same punch, and then drifted. And it is a very nice, clean eye. I'm very happy with the way this eye came out. And if you look at it in profile, it's still parallel across here. Here's one that was done under the hydraulic press. It's deformed. It's so much pressure pushes everything out and bulges it more instead of just shearing the plug. It does more squishing. It's not parallel in this dimension, and I just don't like that. I'm getting away from doing eyes under the press until I figure out a better punch system for the press. I know a lot of people punch eyes under the press and they have better luck than I do, but I need to go visit some of their shops and see exactly what their punch system looks like. I've tried several things, and I'm just not as happy with punching eyes under the press as I would like to be. And because this is a special project, I want it to come out right, and it is worth taking the extra time to do it by hand and not have to fix this garbage than it is to be in a hurry and end up with something you have to fix later. So it's much better to just take my time and do it this way, and I will be much happier with the results. So let's go start the forge. This would be a good place to use this clamping jig we made a while back. And I will work from both sides, and I'll turn it around, but with the clamp, I think I'll do that every heat instead of during a heat like I might normally. Try to keep the punch cool. It's going to heat up a lot in this process. This piece also holds the heat very well, so I can go quite a ways. Just in that first heat. That's a good start. Next heat I'll turn it over. we are just about to shear through. The slug is moving, but it hadn't broken off yet. Well, that went quite deep that time. I'm trying to punch this a little cold so it shears better, but it also is a lot more work. We are just pretty much through here. Get some more punch lube on there. Broken through, but we haven't sheared the entire slug out yet. You might be able to see a little hole in there. So go back from this side and try some more. Let's see if I can do this without that clamp, just so I can turn it around easier. Yeah, that slug is more wedged in than it is still attached. It just moved from one side to the other. I may have to find a longer, skinnier punch that doesn't wedge in the hole like this one does. There's part of the slug. But not quite all of it. Try one more time. And we are through. Hope I can get my punch back. So we have a very clean eye now. It's got very nice ends, nicely shaped. It's a little off center though, so I'm going to have to do some work to thin here and on the other side in the same place. So the eye is actually going a little bit diagonal, which I hope to avoid, but this isn't bad. Just controlled heating and working this just in the right manner, we can fix that, and I'll discuss that when we get to that point. But pretty much that's it for the eye for now. I want to go ahead and do some shaping on the ends because I'm probably going to screw up the eye a little bit doing that, so there's no reason to drift it quite yet. I'm going to try to offset the adze portion a little bit under the hydraulic press, and I'm using a flat die on the top, and I've got a kind of a combination die on the bottom that I pulled out a little bit to try and get it in just the right place. I don't know if this will work or not, but if it does, it ought to make the job a little easier. try this again. Let's see if I can squish that down a little bit. And then to push it off center, just use a little fuller under here. And I don't know if that's worth the effort or not. Well, sometimes the only way to know something's a bad idea is to try it, because it might have turned out to be a good idea. But clearly the off-center and out of balance of that adze doesn't want to play nicely under the hydraulic press, which wants to go straight up and down. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and put the twist in it, and then I'm going to draw it out under the little giant power hammer and maybe a little bit under the press. And at that point, we'll have something I can forge back to center, and probably going to have to trim that little point off of, because it's going to stick way off to the side by the time we're done. I don't think it makes a bit of difference which way we twist this, as long as we get it twisted. I'm going to go a little over 90, because stuff like this tends to want to straighten back out again. Really like to get this pushed over so it's centered, and start dealing with it in line. That's one of those places where I really screw up the eye, but I'll be able to fix that. That's going to help a lot. That's going to make life easier. Instead of cutting this off, I'd like to try and push that down in there and kind of upset that. I'm going to see if I can straighten out the eye a little bit, keep it from getting too bad. This is not my final drift, but I think it'll work. This is exactly why I did not drift the eye initially. I just knew that something was going to conspire to screw it up here. All I want to do is kind of get it straight again. I'm not worried about it being perfect at this point. Gives me a chance to correct a little bit of that eye that's off. This is not the final drift. This is a single-sided drift, and this is one that was made by Brent Bailey out of Atlantic 33 or Flutagon. Really a nice drift. That starts to clean that eye up pretty good. I'll do some from this side. So this will just keep the eye from becoming too deformed in the rest of the process. I'm kind of changing my mind about this twist being the way to go. Definitely a fiddly thing. But we are getting a better shape here. If I can keep pushing that over, I think we might be able to save it. This is clearly going to be a lot of work, and I think that's where I'm going to call it quits for the morning, or should I say the afternoon, because it's about 1 o'clock and it's about 100 degrees in here, and I'm getting hot, tired, hungry, so I think I'm going to go on and have some lunch and then come back and do some cold work. I'm thinking the twist was not such a good idea. I'm starting to think that that first one was probably cut out of a larger piece of plate, so that the adze portion was symmetrical as cut and then twisted, and it was right in line as soon as it was twisted. Trying to get this to all go back the other way is proving to be a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. It's going to work, I think. I think we're going to be able to do it. There are some cold shuts that I've forced into it as a result of doing the twist that I wish I hadn't, but I think I can save that because I'm going to do some forge welding anyways. We'll be able to forge weld those cold shuts closed. When I do the overlay for the tool steel, I think I'll run it all the way up almost to the eye, and that way it'll overlap any of that area that had cold shuts and have a tool steel reinforcement on that entire adze blade. That'll add to the mass, help get it back in balance, help reinforce any of the cold shuts that may still be there if they don't completely weld shut. And I think we're going to save it. If not, I'll start over. But I'll find out. The only way you figure out what works and what doesn't work, and whether you can save a project that's going a little bit off like this, is just to go ahead and try it. Now, if I break this off or something, then, well, all bets are off. It becomes a big axe instead of a Pulaski. But I think it's going to work still. Now, why am I using a drift that isn't the drift that I want? Well, mostly it's because I haven't finished the drift that I want. It's a pretty big drift. It's made out of S7. I can get by with a punch that is not the right punch by working it end to end, and it's okay to not have the punch that's exactly perfect in this case, because I can make that work. But in the long run, the drift has to be right. And I've started forging out this piece of S7. It's got some cold shuts along the edge from trying to taper it, which is sort of expected. So I'm going to grind those out and then finish forging it. Then it'll need to be finished ground, polished, hardened, tempered, and this drift will be ready to go. So hopefully when we get back to this project again, I'll have this drift ready. And I'll perhaps have finished straightening this adze part out. You kind of see what I'm doing. I'm trying to keep just the adze hot, work it with the drift in so I don't screw up the eye, upset it down, and I think it's working other than the cold shut area. And I'll fix those at welding heat. So I think there's hope. I think we're going to save it. If not, like I say, we can always start over. It wouldn't be the first time. I hope this is interesting. I know it's not a complete how-to, and I know I'm kind of making this up as I go. I've never made a Pulaski before, so this is all new to me. I'm learning some things. I think I would approach it a little differently if I tried this again in the future. I hope you're learning something and can apply this to something you're working on, even though you're probably not going to make this project. But if you are, you can say, oh, I wouldn't do it that way, and you can try it your way and let me know if it works. In the meantime, I hope you did enjoy the video. Hope it was at least entertaining, if not as educational as I might have liked. Give it a thumbs up. Love it if you hit that subscribe button. Remember, we're getting close to 20,000 subscribers, and we're going to do a little giveaway when that happens, so make sure you watch the videos over the next few days so you know when that happens, because there will just be a small window of opportunity to enter the giveaway. In the meantime, get out to your shop, make something, but do stay safe, do wear your safety glasses. I'm going to lunch.